blood pooled beneath Andre as Officer Bradley Mercer stood over him, both hands still wrapped around his smoking service pistol. Across town, 3 miles away, Commander Elijah Carter got the call about his only son. The veteran Navy SEAL closed his eyes, gripped his phone, and activated the contingency plan he'd spent years quietly refining. Before we dive into this brutal story of abuse of power and calculated accountability, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and join our community demanding real justice and real change. This story shows how one grieving father used elite training to challenge a corrupt system from the inside. Andre Carter had always been cautious. Growing up as the only child of Commander Elijah Carter, a decorated Navy SEAL with more than 3 decades in uniform, he'd absorbed countless talks about how to move through the world as a young black man in America. Every lecture was about survival, not paranoia, how to come home alive. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, the 21-year-old pre-med student at Howard University was driving through Oakwood Heights, an upscale, mostly white neighborhood, to pick up his girlfriend Jasmine for a study session. His car, a sleek sedan gifted by his father for graduating high school with honors, immediately drew the attention of Officer Mercer, a 44-year-old cop cruising the area. Mercer, known in the department for his aggressive tactics in what he liked to call high-risk zones, instantly tagged Andre as suspicious. The reality was darker. Mercer carried a hidden trail of racial complaints over his 17-year career, buried under bureaucracy and departmental protection. Each allegation disappeared into internal files, shielded by union lawyers and silent supervisors. Mercer tailed Andre for several blocks, scanning for any pretext to justify a stop. When Andre signaled a right turn a couple of seconds later than Mercer judged acceptable, the officer flipped on his lights and siren. Andre complied immediately, easing his car to a smooth stop along Maple Avenue, a tree-lined street of immaculate million-dollar homes. He replayed every rule his father had drilled into him. Keep both hands high and visible on the steering wheel. Move slowly. Narrate every movement before making it. Be polite, even if disrespected, but remember your rights. Mercer approached with his hand already resting on his holstered gun, a posture he rarely used with white drivers in similar situations. As Mercer reached the driver's side window, his face flickered with surprise at the sight of a well-dressed young black man behind the wheel of such an expensive car. Andre stayed calm, addressing him as "Sir," keeping his tone steady. Mercer demanded license and registration without bothering to explain why he had initiated the stop in the first place. "Do you understand why I pulled you over today?" Mercer asked, his tone loaded, like he expected to catch Andre in a lie. "No, sir," Andre answered evenly. "I don't believe I was speeding or breaking any traffic laws." The respectful reply landed as an insult. Mercer heard not politeness, but defiance. His authority in his mind was being challenged. "You were driving suspiciously," Mercer snapped, using a vague accusation that could mean anything or nothing at all. "You don't belong in this neighborhood." Andre had heard some version of that line his whole life. The implication was obvious. Black people didn't belong in wealthy spaces unless they were serving. From a nearby porch, 70-year-old retired teacher Marion Clark watched uneasily. She noticed Mercer's posture, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hand hovered near his weapon. Her stomach tightened. Marion quietly pulled her phone from her sweater pocket and began recording from behind a flower pot. "Step out of the vehicle," Mercer ordered, his voice rising. Still following his father's instructions, Andre replied calmly, "May I ask why, officer?" For Mercer, that question was the ultimate disrespect. He yanked his gun from its holster and pointed it directly at Andre through the open window. "I said, get out of the car! Now!" he shouted, face twisted with anger. Andre slowly raised both hands higher, showing he posed no threat. As he reached for the door handle, his wallet slipped. It tumbled from his lap into the narrow space beside the seat. Reflexively, Andre dipped his right hand to catch it. "I'm just getting my ID," he said clearly, voice steady but urgent. Mercer had already decided what he wanted to see. 3 shots exploded in quick succession. Marion screamed from her porch, her phone still filming as Andre collapsed. Andre's body folded forward against the steering wheel, blood blooming across his light blue button-down shirt, a birthday gift from his mother just months earlier. Mercer stood frozen for a heartbeat, gun still raised, as if stunned by the reality he'd created. Then instinct, his version of training, kicked in. He radioed in shots fired, suspect down, possible weapon reach. His tone was eerily calm as he lied, framing Andre as the aggressor. Mercer made no move to check for a pulse, apply pressure to wounds, or even speak to the dying young man. He simply held his position, weapons still drawn, waiting on backup. Marion's hand shook as she recorded, but she refused to look away or stop filming. She captured everything: Mercer's casual posture, his lack of urgency, paramedics arriving only to pronounce Andre dead at the scene. Only after medical personnel started working did Mercer finally holster his weapon and begin rifling through Andre's car and belongings. That's when he saw it: Andre's military-dependent ID card lying beside his Howard University student ID. Mercer's expression shifted as the implications hit. This wasn't just some anonymous black kid from the city. The name Carter didn't register yet, but the military connection sent a chill through him. Military families had resources, leverage, and weren't easily bullied by badges. Meanwhile, Marion had already stopped recording and was uploading the raw footage to social media. Within an hour, the uncut video of a police officer shooting a clearly non-threatening young black man began spreading online. Commander Elijah Carter was reviewing mission reports at Naval Special Warfare Command when his secure phone vibrated. He recognized the regional area code, but not the specific number. Something deep in his warrior's intuition told him to brace himself. "Commander Carter," a woman said, "this is Detective Karen Holt with the Metropolitan Police Department. There's been an incident involving your son." The words that followed felt distant, muffled, as if traveling underwater. "Officer involved shooting. Pronounced dead at the scene. Apparent misunderstanding. Investigation underway. Internal affairs. Standard procedure." The detective's well-rehearsed phrases washed over him. 30-plus years of discipline kept Elijah from crumbling. "Thank you for informing me, Detective," he replied, voice controlled. "I'll make arrangements immediately. Anything else I should know?" Holt, caught off guard by his composure, explained that someone would contact him about releasing Andre's body once the medical examiner finished. When the call ended, Elijah closed his eyes and allowed himself exactly 60 seconds to break. In that minute, memories crashed over him. Teaching 4-year-old Andre to swim, 8-year-old Andre staggering under his oversized Navy cap, grinning proudly. He remembered 12-year-old Andre asking why police seemed to treat them differently, 16-year-old Andre clenching the steering wheel during their first driving lesson, and Andre in his graduation cap just months earlier, glowing with plans for medical school. The timer on Elijah's watch beeped softly, signaling the end of his grief window. The tears stopped. Now the mission began. Elijah had survived and excelled in an institution that hadn't always welcomed black men in command roles. He'd endured overt and subtle racism, answering it with a level of excellence that couldn't be ignored. Along the way, he built a powerful network, a brotherhood and sisterhood stretching across branches and ranks, bound by blood, sacrifice, and oaths deeper than paperwork. He'd always known this day could come, not necessarily to Andre, but to someone he loved. He'd watched too many body cam clips, read too many obituaries, attended too many memorials, so he'd prepared. Years earlier, he quietly designed Phoenix Protocol, an organized, multi-front response to the specific threat of police violence against his family. Today, tragedy triggered the plan. Elijah's first call was to Lieutenant Commander Victor Reyes, his longtime executive officer and closest friend. "Victor," he said when Reyes answered, "Phoenix is active, Andre." Those 3 words were enough. Reyes's tone shifted instantly from casual to mission-focused. "Understood. I'm coming to you now. First wave of calls going out." "Timeline, 40 minutes, Elijah replied. "Set up at my house. Full kit." Reyes didn't waste breath on sorries or questions. Those would come later, if at all. "Roger that, Commander. We're with you." Elijah's next call was to Monique Jefferson, a high-profile civil rights attorney he'd kept on retainer for 5 years, specifically for this nightmare scenario. "Ms. Jefferson," he said, "this is Commander Carter. The situation we discussed is now real." Jefferson, who had initially thought his standing retainer for such a precise contingency was excessive, now understood his foresight. "I've already seen the video, Commander," she said, her voice both gentle and steel-hard. "It's everywhere." She offered condolences, then added, "My team's assembling now." Elijah laid out his expectations. Maximal legal pressure on all fronts. No theatrics, only relentless strategy. "We pursue justice methodically through every lawful channel," he said. "No shortcuts, no grandstanding," Jefferson agreed. "I'll need access to whatever intelligence your network pulls in," she added. "We'll set up secure comms within the hour," Elijah promised. As he drove home through a quiet suburban neighborhood, his mind shifted into operational mode. Grief compartmentalized behind a locked mental bulkhead. When Elijah stepped into his house, Reyes was already there with 3 men and 2 women, all carrying the unmistakable bearing of seasoned operators despite their civilian clothes. Elijah recognized Captain Jerome Fields, former Army Ranger, Master Chief Raul Delgado, Major Hannah Lynn from Air Force Intelligence, and Michael Doc O'Neill, a former SEAL medic who'd patched Elijah up overseas. The 6th person, Staff Sergeant Carla Ruiz, a communications specialist, was already stringing cables and configuring encrypted systems in Elijah's home office. No one offered condolences yet. They all understood that in their world, the most meaningful sympathy was flawless execution. Elijah led them to the dining room, now cleared and ready to transform into an improvised operations center. "I appreciate how fast you all got here," he began, voice steady though his eyes burned. "My son, Andre, was shot and killed today by a police officer during a routine traffic stop. There is video clearly showing the shooting was unjustified. The officer's name is Bradley Mercer, 44, Metropolitan Police Department. He clicked a remote, projecting Mercer's personnel photo. Our mission is total justice, legal, media, and institutional accountability, Elijah continued. This is not revenge. This is not about physical retaliation. Everything we do will be within the law, but we will use every inch of that law. Is that understood? The team nodded silently. Some jaws clenched, everyone focused. Elijah moved immediately into detailed tasking and assignments. Reyes would coordinate incoming operators, oversee surveillance, and manage logistics. Major Lynn would head intelligence collection, digging into Mercer's background and the department's broader pattern of misconduct. Captain Fields would liaise with sympathetic contacts inside law enforcement, cops and investigators, tired of looking the other way. Doc O'Neill would review medical reports, autopsy findings, and analyze the shooting's ballistic realities. Staff Sergeant Ruiz would maintain secure communications, monitor real-time social media reaction, and manage information flow. Elijah's phone vibrated constantly with incoming texts and calls from his extended network, former teammates, protégés, and allies, offering resources and asking how they could help. Within 2 hours of learning his son was dead, Elijah had mobilized more than 20 elite professionals. Some converged on his home, others deployed to key locations. Near Mercer's house, the police headquarters, the district attorney's office. These weren't vigilantes looking for a street fight. They were seasoned experts in surveillance, intelligence, psychological operations, strategic communications, and logistics. Their chosen weapons weren't rifles or explosives, but information, documentation, public pressure, and unshakable command of the law. By nightfall, Phoenix Protocol was fully operational. Mercer's quiet subdivision now included several newly rented homes with curiously short leases, vehicles strategically parked with clear views of his driveway, and long-lens cameras trained on every approach. Hidden microphones captured street noise and conversations. Mercer went to bed that night, oblivious that his life had just become an ongoing operation. He had no idea he'd become the primary target of one of the most sophisticated private accountability campaigns ever aimed at a single police officer. Have you ever wondered what races through an officer's mind after they pull the trigger? Or how the machinery around them instantly spins up to shield them from consequences? Watch closely. You're about to see. Officer Bradley Mercer returned to the precinct with a slight tremor in his hands, adrenaline still pounding in his veins. The station buzzed as word of the shooting spread. But Mercer picked up on something strange. No one quite looked him in the eye. Captain Paul Harrigan, his supervisor and longtime bar companion, quickly pulled him into a cramped conference room. "Brad, we've got to get ahead of this," Harrigan said, his fleshy face unusually serious. "I need every detail. Don't leave anything out." Mercer bristled. "This isn't my first time, Cap," he snapped. "Kid was acting sketchy, driving a car that didn't match the neighborhood. When I approached, he got mouthy, then reached for something. I followed protocol exactly." Harrigan nodded slowly, but his eyes stayed troubled. "There's footage, Brad. Some older woman recorded the whole thing from her porch. It's already circulating online." Mercer felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "What does it show?" Harrigan shrugged. "Haven't watched it yet, but the word is, it doesn't play in your favor. Doesn't matter. We know the routine." "I've already called Keene from the union," Harrigan added, referring to Daniel Keene, the department's go-to attorney who'd gotten multiple officers cleared in previous brutality cases. Mercer exhaled, muscles loosening slightly at the name. "Standard procedure," Harrigan continued. "Paid administrative leave while internal affairs does their dance. You know the script. You feared for your life. Stick to that." Within half an hour, Keene arrived, impeccably dressed, smirk practically stitched onto his face. He reviewed Mercer's initial statement and immediately started editing the language. "You didn't shoot a suspect," he corrected. "You discharged your weapon in response to a perceived lethal threat. You weren't irritated or offended. You were focused on public safety. Words matter. Say it correctly." Mercer nodded along, scribbling revisions, trained by experience to defer to the union lawyer. He'd already walked this path twice before. Less severe incidents, both involving black men who later filed excessive force complaints. Those cases vanished into sealed settlements and backroom agreements. After the paperwork was sanitized, Mercer was sent home and told to avoid the press and comment sections. Driving back to his comfortable split level in Ridgewood Estates, Mercer felt his shoulders ease. The system, as always, seemed to be doing its job. Circle the wagons, protect the badge. His only nagging worry was the video, but he reassured himself that Keene and the union would twist the narrative, question angles, and smear the victim's character if necessary. When Mercer pulled into his driveway, his wife, Megan, was already at the front door, face tight with anxiety. Her highlighted hair was yanked into a messy ponytail, and she still wore her dental hygienist scrubs. "Is it true?" she demanded as he stepped inside. "People on Facebook are saying you shot some college kid who wasn't even armed." "It's under control," Mercer muttered, dropping his keys on the entry table. "Bad situation that escalated fast. Guy was driving through Oakwood Heights in a car worth more than our house. When I tried to question him, he got confrontational." Megan's expression showed doubt. "They're saying he was reaching for his ID like he told you he was. The footage looks awful." Mercer's temper flared. "Since when do you believe internet garbage over your own husband?" he shouted. "You know how these people get when they're pulled over. Attitude, entitlement, acting like the rules don't apply. You weren't there." His voice boomed down the hallway, and their 16-year-old daughter, Chloe, appeared, eyes wide, clutching her phone, fear written across her face. "Dad, what's going on?" Chloe asked. "Everyone at school is sharing this video." "Is it you?" Mercer forced his tone softer. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart. Just work stuff being blown up online. Go finish your homework." After she disappeared, he poured himself a heavy glass of whiskey and dropped onto the couch, exhaustion and arrogance mixing uneasily. Megan sat across from him, arms folded tight across her chest. "This isn't going away, is it?" she asked quietly. Mercer drained half his drink before answering. "It always blows over. The department knows the drill. News cycle moves on. People get outraged for a couple days, then latch onto the next thing." Hey, he told himself that, tried to believe it. His phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from officers pledging support, links to the rapidly spreading video, news alerts. When he finally worked up the nerve to watch the footage, his stomach dropped. The clip showed him marching up aggressively, Andre's hands clearly visible. The shooting happening as Andre reached toward the fallen wallet, verbally stating he was grabbing his ID. Even worse, the video captured Mercer standing over Andre's bleeding body, offering no aid, no urgency, just cold detachment. Comments flooded beneath the clip, calling for his arrest, his badge, his freedom. Mercer fumbled to shut off his phone. That night, as Megan tossed beside him, he lay stare-eyed, hearing his father's old words echo in the dark. "These people need to remember their place," his father used to mutter, a factory foreman who'd lost his job and blamed affirmative action rather than automation or management. Those resentments had seeped into Mercer's bones, shaping how he saw black success, as a threat, not an achievement. On the job, that poison became heightened suspicion, harsher tactics, and falsified narratives. His prior incidents, breaking a black teenager's arm during a low-level arrest, planting drugs on a black shop owner who complained about harassment, had been quietly buried. Settlement money, sealed records, friendly judges. Around midnight, headlights swept across his bedroom ceiling again and again. Cars rolled past slowly, another and another. Outside, unfamiliar vehicles appeared, and a dog walker lingered suspiciously long. Mercer's police instincts pinged. Something felt off. Do you stand with officers like Mercer who abuse their power? Or do you believe in real accountability for those sworn to protect and serve? Drop a justice in the comments if you think cops should face the same courts as civilians when they commit crimes. Smash that like button if you're with us. Subscribe to follow the rest of this unfolding fight for justice and see how one father's strategic, disciplined response sends shockwaves through an entire system. Can a decorated military commander truly leverage his skills and network to overcome institutions built to protect their own? Let's keep going and find out what happens when Mercer realizes his shield is cracking. While Mercer tossed restlessly in his bed, Commander Elijah Carter's network executed Phoenix Protocol with surgical precision. The dining room in Elijah's quiet home had become a tactical hub. Laptops open, secure radios humming, maps and printouts covering every surface. By now, 27 operators had checked in, each bringing specialized training and decades of hardened experience to the mission. Master Chief Raul Gabe Delgado, a broad-shouldered special operations veteran, led the surveillance cell. His team had already established overlapping eyes on Mercer's neighborhood, renting 3 nearby houses through shell companies and short-term corporate housing. "We've got full visual on all routes to the subject's residence, Commander," Delgado reported. "Tech package is going in now. No direct contact. We're ghosts." Captain Jerome Fields, 6'4" with the quiet intensity of a former Ranger, coordinated with insider law enforcement contacts frustrated by years of looking away. "Officially, the department's circling the wagons," he said, scanning his encrypted tablet. "Unofficially, I've got 3 officers who've clashed with Mercer before. They say he's had multiple racial incidents that were buried by brass and union." Major Hannah Lynn, whose intelligence work had once saved entire platoons overseas, had already slipped into the department's personnel database. "Mercer's file shows 8 excessive force complaints," she reported, fingers flashing across keys. "Every single one involves Black or Latino civilians, all dismissed or quietly settled with no admission of wrongdoing. The pattern is unmistakable. We can leverage this big time." Doc O'Neill, who'd patched wounds under fire with Elijah on multiple deployments, studied the limited medical notes and frame-by-frame analysis of the shooting. "Best I can tell, the first round likely hit the aorta," he said grimly, "fatal on its own. The follow-up shots are overkill, not fear. They scream intent." Elijah absorbed the information, jaw tight, eyes blazing. Everyone in the room understood the impossible restraint he was exercising, processing his son's execution like another mission briefing. In an adjacent room, attorney Monique Jefferson worked with her legal team, laptops open, printers humming. "We've already filed emergency motions to preserve all evidence, body cam footage, dispatch audio, files," she told Elijah. "Now, we're building both criminal and civil strategies simultaneously. The wrongful death suit will name Mercer, the department, the city, and the police union," she continued. Elijah agreed with the broad scope. "Everything we do must be bulletproof legally," he said. "We win this by exposing the system on its own terms." Jefferson nodded. "Then we'll need your people's intel as soon as it comes in," she added. Elijah promised full cooperation. Lieutenant Commander Reyes managed the constant flow of personnel, pairing skills with roles. A psychological operations unit, led by former Army Specialist Anthony Vega, designed pressure campaigns to destabilize Mercer emotionally without crossing legal lines. "We want him constantly aware he's being watched," Vega explained. "Uncertainty and isolation are our main tools. Classic, low-intensity psyops. Late-night phone calls with dead air. Cars cruising by at odd hours. New faces walking dogs past his house. Anonymous but ever-present eyes," Vega continued. "Nothing overtly threatening, nothing chargeable. Just enough to keep him on edge, exhausted." Reyes nodded. "We've got operators renting short-term stays on his street, joining the neighborhood Facebook group, blending in like locals." At around 3 in the morning, Elijah finally stepped outside for a sliver of quiet. The air was cool and sharp as he stared up at the stars. Stars his son would never see again. Reyes joined him in silence, shoulder to shoulder, no rank between them for a moment. "In 20 years, I've never seen you mobilize this fast," Reyes murmured. "Andre would be proud of what you're doing." Elijah's jaw flexed at his son's name. "When I taught him to drive, I gave him the talk every black father gives his son," he said, voice low. "Hands visible. No sudden movements. Yes, sir. No, sir. Do whatever they say, even if it's humiliating. I told him it might save his life." "I was wrong, Vic," Elijah continued. "He followed every rule, and that officer still put 3 rounds into him." Reyes placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder, a rare break from military formality that spoke volumes. "Then we make sure this system doesn't stay the same," he replied. "That's what Phoenix is really about, not just Andre. All the Andres out there." By sunrise, the operation had grown even more intricate. Surveillance teams monitored not just Mercer's home, but also the police station, the district attorney's office, and City Hall. Intelligence teams compiled deep dossiers on decision-makers, their donors, their past cases, their public statements. Media specialists drafted carefully timed information releases to shape public opinion without overplaying their hand. Technical experts hardened secure communications, backed up every file, and captured online reactions in real time. Financial analysts traced settlement funds, union defense money, and political donations that had quietly protected abusive officers for years. As sunlight washed over the city, Bradley Mercer remained ignorant that he now stood at the center of a coordinated multi-domain accountability campaign. He'd made the gravest mistake of his life when he fired those 3 shots into the car of a Navy commander's only son. The shield that had always guarded him, unions, prosecutors, friendly superiors, was about to meet something it had never faced before. A grieving father with elite training, deep resources, and an unwavering commitment to lawful, relentless justice. On day 2 after the shooting, Mercer woke with a pounding headache, a mix of cheap whiskey and fractured sleep. The house phone had rung again and again through the night. Every time he or Megan picked up, there had been only silence, then a click. "Probably activist," he muttered, though the precision of the timing made him uneasy. When Mercer yanked open the bedroom curtains, his heart lurched. His once quiet suburban street looked like a media battleground. News vans with satellite dishes were parked at each end of the block. Reporters clutched microphones, facing cameras. Unfamiliar cars lined the curbs, some with people sitting motionless inside, watching his house. Protesters clustered in small groups, holding hand-lettered signs. "Justice for Andre. Prosecute killer cops." Mercer jerked the curtains shut and grabbed his phone. 16 missed calls, dozens of messages, endless news alerts. He dialed Captain Harrigan. "Paul, what the hell is going on?" he demanded. "Reporters, protesters. I can't even step outside." Harrigan sounded worn down. "It's bad, Brad. The video hit every national morning show today. That kid you shot? His father is some big deal Navy SEAL commander with serious connections," Harrigan continued. "The chief's getting calls from the mayor, the governor, even people at the Pentagon. The brass are panicking. The union still says they're behind you, but Keene told me privately they're worried about how this looks. The optics are terrible." "The optics?" Mercer snapped. "What about backing me up?" "I approached a suspicious car. Guy reached for something. I reacted. What was I supposed to do?" There was a long pause. "The video shows him clearly saying he's reaching for his ID, Brad," Harrigan answered quietly. "His hands are visible the whole time. And you don't try to help him afterward." "It looks bad," Harrigan repeated. "I'm just being straight with you." Mercer hung up and sank onto the bed. Megan appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Chloe's school called," she said. "Kids were confronting her, saying her dad's a murderer. I'm keeping her home today." Mercer barely nodded, mind racing. He couldn't step outside without facing cameras and chance. The department seemed to be backing away. His phone buzzed with a text from another officer. "Saw the full video. Can't help you with this one, man." The isolation sank in. Then the doorbell rang. Megan answered carefully, chain still latched. A formal voice announced, "Delivery. For Officer Mercer, signature required." She returned with a thick envelope, hands trembling. Inside were legal documents. Andre Carter's family had filed a wrongful death lawsuit naming Mercer, the department, the city, and the police union. The potential damages ran into the millions. As he tried to process the lawsuit, breaking news banners flashed on his phone. The shooting video was now being paired with segments on Commander Carter's distinguished service record. Networks highlighted Andre's academic achievements, his dreams of becoming a doctor, and the growing nationwide demands for Mercer's arrest. One alert made Mercer's stomach twist. Navy SEAL commander holds press conference on son's killing. He flicked on the television just in time to see Elijah Carter in full dress uniform, ribbons and medals gleaming beneath harsh studio lights. The contrast was brutal. A decorated war hero speaking calmly as a grieving father versus a disgraced officer hiding in his house. Elijah's words were measured, void of rage but heavy with resolve. "My son Andre was a young man of extraordinary character and promise," he said. "He was unarmed, compliant, and communicating clearly when Officer Mercer chose deadly force. As Americans, we cannot accept a system that protects those who abuse their authority," Elijah continued. As a father, I will not rest until justice is done. Mercer felt something unfamiliar. Fear of a man who refused to scream or threaten, but promised to use every lawful means against him. Somehow, the lack of anger was more terrifying than shouting. Throughout the day, Mercer's sense of isolation deepened. Officers who'd been texting support stopped responding. The police union rep called only to suggest he lay low and avoid any statements. Harrigan informed him that the department was reviewing his entire disciplinary history. Even his closest friends on the force suddenly became too busy to meet or take his calls. By mid-afternoon, Mercer tried to drive out for groceries, but the moment he cracked the garage door, reporters and protesters swarmed, cameras pointed straight at him, microphones thrust forward. He panicked and retreated, slamming the door shut. He ended up ordering delivery instead. When it arrived, he watched the driver snap photos of his house before walking away. Pressure mounted from every direction. Megan found a petition circulating among neighbors, politely asking the Mercers to move for everyone's safety. Chloe showed her father screenshots of classmates calling him a killer in group chats and posts. Mercer's brother called to say his wife didn't feel comfortable bringing their kids to visit anymore. Rejection piled up like debris around him. By evening, Mercer noticed more unfamiliar cars settling onto his street. Different people walking dogs, some twice in an hour. A constant feeling of being watched pressed on him. When he called the department to request a patrol car outside his house, the dispatcher explained that resources were stretched thin by protests at headquarters. "Maybe tomorrow," she said unconvincingly. Night fell heavy. Mercer stripped and reassembled his personal firearms on the kitchen table like a ritual, then kept them close, flinching at every noise from outside. Megan cornered him near the sink, voice hushed so Chloe wouldn't hear. "I watched the video, Brad. All of it," she said. "You didn't tell me the truth. He wasn't attacking you. He was just a kid reaching for his wallet, exactly like he said," Megan continued, tears brimming. "You shot him because you saw a young black man in a nice car and decided he didn't belong there. That's what happened." Mercer's face flushed, bright red with anger and shame. "You don't understand what it's like out there," he growled. "Split-second decisions. Adrenaline. It looks different in the moment," he insisted. Megan shook her head, devastated. "I've stood by you through everything," she whispered. "But this time, the video shows the truth. No excuses, no angles. You pulled that trigger because of what you believed about him, not what he did." Her words hit harder than any protest chant outside. "I'm taking Chloe to my sister's tomorrow," Megan said finally, voice shaking. "We need distance. From this house, from you, from all of it." Mercer opened his mouth to argue, but the words tangled in his throat. He'd always assumed the system, his colleagues, even his family, would stand behind him no matter what. For the first time, he felt abandoned. As Megan turned away, Mercer's hand twitched upward, a reflex he barely stopped in time. He froze, horrified by his own impulse. Megan flinched anyway, instinctively recoiling as if expecting a blow. Between them, a gulf opened that no union lawyer, no carefully crafted statement could bridge. For once, there was no script, no training manual to hide behind. Megan wiped her eyes and stepped back, putting physical space between them. "You didn't just pull that trigger because you were scared," she said quietly. "You did it because you'd already decided what kind of person he was." Mercer had no answer. In that moment, even before the courts weighed in, he realized the verdict that mattered most had already been delivered. In an instant, every light in the house snapped off. Mercer froze, then grabbed his duty pistol and edged toward the front window. Outside, shapes moved with deliberate calm, like people who'd expected the outage. For exactly 37 minutes, the neighborhood stayed swallowed in black. When electricity finally surged back, the street looked ordinary again. But nothing felt ordinary to Mercer. The timing, the silence, the steady figures outside, it all seemed like a controlled demonstration. Someone was showing him they could reach into his world and flip the switch whenever they wanted. He stayed awake the entire night, eyes burning, watching from the window, flinching at every car door and branch scrape. By sunrise, the once swaggering cop was a wreck, paranoid, exhausted, convinced that unseen hands were tightening around him. His confidence had collapsed, his allies had gone quiet, and even his home no longer felt safe. And he still had no clue that his growing isolation was being carefully engineered by a grieving father's elite network. What would you do if the same system that always shielded you suddenly turned its power against you? By day 3 after the shooting, Officer Bradley Mercer was living that nightmare in real time. The mayor, under massive public pressure and relentless media coverage, stepped in front of cameras on the steps of City Hall. "We are committed to a thorough and transparent review of this tragic event," Mayor Regina Lawson declared, carefully avoiding Mercer's name. "To that end, I'm establishing an independent review panel to examine not only this incident, but our entire department's use of force policies and accountability structures." Her tone was polished, political, designed to calm an enraged city. Mercer watched from his couch, hands clenched, noticing how the same mayor who once praised him at his academy graduation as one of our finest now refused to acknowledge him at all. Shortly after the press conference, he received official notice. He was being placed on unpaid administrative leave pending multiple internal and external investigations. The police union, which had initially promised unwavering support, abruptly shifted its tone. They'd still assign him an attorney, they said, but were stepping back from defending his actions in public. The protective walls Mercer had always counted on were cracking. What he didn't know was that Commander Elijah Carter had helped push them. That morning, Carter requested a closed-door meeting with Police Commissioner Leonard Hayes, a request Hayes couldn't refuse given Carter's rank and the national attention. In the commissioner's dark wood office, Carter sat in full-dress uniform, a slim folder resting on his lap. "Commissioner, thank you for seeing me," he began, voice formal yet steely. "I'll be straightforward," Carter said. "My team has compiled extensive documentation of Officer Mercer's racist conduct and your department's efforts to bury his behavior." He opened the folder to reveal photocopies Hayes immediately recognized from supposedly confidential personnel files. Carter continued calmly. "We've also identified 17 other officers showing similar patterns and the supervisors protecting them." Carter's tone never rose. "I'm not here to grandstand or threaten anyone. I'm here to present you with a decision." Commissioner Hayes, a political appointee with quiet ambitions for higher office, heard the unspoken warning clearly. He could go down with this scandal or step out front as a reformer who confronted rot inside his own department. After a long pause, Hayes leaned forward. "What exactly are you asking for?" Carter laid out his terms: Mercer's immediate suspension, full cooperation with independent and internal investigators, and a public pledge to pursue real departmental reforms. By the time Carter walked out, he had more than vague assurances. He had the commissioner's commitment to specific, actionable steps. Within hours, internal affairs investigators began quietly interviewing Mercer's colleagues about his conduct. Sensing where the wind was blowing, Captain Paul Harrigan moved quickly to protect himself. When questioned, he suddenly remembered past incidents and complaints that had been downplayed or buried, painting a picture of a troubled officer he'd supposedly tried to manage responsibly. "I did my best to mentor him, to redirect his approach," Harrigan claimed, positioning himself as the conscientious supervisor. But his views were deeply ingrained. He produced old emails and memos he'd previously tucked away, magically creating a paper trail showing he'd raised concerns through official channels. In reality, he was crafting a lifeline from Mercer's sinking ship. Meanwhile, civil rights attorney Monique Jefferson continued building both criminal and civil cases with surgical precision. Her team interviewed witnesses, gathered evidence showing departmental negligence in repeatedly retaining Mercer despite multiple red flags, and prepared extensive materials for a grand jury. Nothing was rushed, nothing sloppy. Every piece of evidence was cross-checked and strategically organized. When Jefferson met with District Attorney Samuel Price, she laid out her case. "The video alone is damning," she said. "But when you add his documented pattern, the buried complaints and testimony from fellow officers, you're looking at a clear case for first-degree murder." Price, long reluctant to prosecute police, suddenly found the ground shifting beneath him. Public outrage, Jefferson's airtight casework, and Mercer's visible abandonment by city leadership created a perfect storm. Price announced he would swiftly convene a grand jury to review charges. Mercer watched the announcement with mounting terror. Calls to former colleagues went straight to voicemail. Law firms he contacted politely declined, citing conflicts and community considerations. Even private attorneys, who once bragged about defending police, refused to touch his case. The union lawyer quietly suggested he think about a plie if charges came. Harrigan, his drinking buddy and longtime protector, stopped answering altogether. Feeling cornered and betrayed, Mercer drifted into darker corners of the internet, searching for people who'd validate his victim narrative. "I'm being sacrificed for doing my job," he wrote on an extremist forum. "They're throwing me under the bus to satisfy the mob." Replies poured in from fringe groups promising solidarity, some hinting at sending armed supporters to defend him. Mercer clung to their validation, not realizing that every keystroke was being tracked by Carter's intelligence cell. Major Hannah Lynn's team had flagged Mercer's online activity and forwarded his communications with extremist organizations to federal and local authorities. By that evening, Mercer's house truly stood alone. Megan had taken Chloe to stay with family, finally admitting she believed the video more than his story. Neighbors organized a candlelight vigil for Andre Carter at the nearby park. The vigil was deliberately positioned in clear view of Mercer's front windows, a quiet, powerful reminder of the life he'd taken. Even the neighborhood pizza place started refusing delivery to his address. As darkness fell, Mercer sat at his kitchen table with his service weapon laid out before him, stunned by how fast everything had collapsed. The phone rang, jolting him. Hoping it might be Megan, he snatched it up. "We know what you did," a calm voice said, then hung up. Mercer couldn't tell if it was a protester, a random crank, or something else entirely. But the message left him shaking. He checked every lock twice and yanked all the blinds shut. Do you think the justice system handles police officers differently than regular citizens? Comment 1 if you believe cops should face the same penalties as everyone else when they commit crimes. Hit like if you think Commander Carter's meticulous, strategic approach is more effective than protests alone. Subscribe to see how his plan keeps dismantling Mercer's protections. As Mercer watched his support system evaporate, what desperate moves would he make next? And how would Carter's team respond once extremist groups started circling? Early on day 4, Mercer jolted awake at the sharp thud of something hitting his driveway. Heart racing, he crept to the window and peered through a narrow gap in the blinds. The word murderer screamed across the concrete in dripping red paint, still glossy under the morning sun. Rage surged through him. He grabbed his phone, ready to call the police, then stopped, letting out a bitter, broken laugh. He was the police, or had been until a few days ago. Now he wasn't sure what he was. Across town, Carter was in a briefing when Captain Jerome Fields reported the vandalism. "Commander, someone hit Mercer's driveway," Fields said. Carter frowned immediately. "Not our doing," he said. "Make this absolutely clear to everyone. We stay inside the law. No property damage, no threats, no off-book intimidation. Our power is precision and legitimacy, nothing that looks like vigilante justice." Mercer, of course, had no idea Carter had condemned the stunt. He saw it as proof the protesters were escalating. Paranoid and frantic, he shoved furniture against the front and back doors, stacking chairs and heavy tables into makeshift barricades. He collected every firearm he owned, loaded each one, and staged them at windows and doorways. The logical part of his brain knew he was going overboard, but fear, isolation, and drink were chipping away at reason. When his phone rang with an unfamiliar number, he hesitated, then answered. "Officer Mercer, this is Assistant District Attorney Claire Benton from the DA's office," a crisp voice said. "You are being subpoenaed before the grand jury tomorrow at 9 a.m. Adek otatiat. Failure to appear will result in a warrant for your arrest," she added. Mercer's mouth went dry. "Already? The investigation just started," he stammered. Benton's tone stayed neutral. "The subpoena will be hand-delivered to your residence within the hour. This call serves as formal notification." After hanging up, Mercer immediately dialed the union attorney, Daniel Keene, furious. "You told me this would take weeks," he shouted when Keene answered. The lawyer exhaled heavily. "Things accelerated, Brad. The evidence is bad, especially now that Captain Harrigan is cooperating fully with internal affairs." The words felt like a punch. "Harrigan is cooperating? What does that mean?" Mercer demanded. The pause on the line said everything before Keene even spoke. "He's turned over documentation of your prior incidents and claims he tried to address your behavior through proper channels," Keene admitted. "He's setting himself up as a whistleblower who wasn't taken seriously." The betrayal stunned Mercer mute. After a moment, Keene continued more quietly. "Look, with the video, your record, and Harrigan's testimony, a PLEA might be your only realistic option." Mercer ended the call without another word, mind-spinning. The same system that had always shielded him wasn't just stepping aside, it was now actively helping to take him down. Harrigan, his supposed mentor of 15 years, was feeding him to the wolves. As Mercer tried to process it, the doorbell rang, making him jump. In desperation, he called Harrigan directly, clinging to some hope that friendship still meant something. "Paul, it's me," he said when Harrigan picked up. "I heard you've been talking to Internal Affairs." Harrigan's voice came out flat, defensive. "I'm doing what I need to do, Brad. You went too far. I can't cover for you this time." "Cover for me?" Mercer exploded. "You encouraged half of what I did. You laughed when I put that dealer in the hospital. You coached my reports so they'd pass review. Don't suddenly pretend you're some reform crusader." Harrigan's tone hardened. "Watch what you say. Phones can be monitored. I've always tried to steer officers toward proper procedure and filed my concerns when necessary." Mercer suddenly understood. Harrigan was scripting this conversation for anyone listening, building a record that painted himself as the responsible supervisor and Mercer as the lone problem. In a blind fury, Mercer ranted threats, accusations, and half-drunk confessions, each word making things worse. Harrigan stayed quiet, letting him dig deeper, collecting free evidence in real time. Only when Mercer finally ran out of breath did Harrigan speak again. "This call is over," he said. "Follow the subpoena and get competent legal advice." The line went dead, leaving Mercer alone amid his barricades and scattered weapons. A news alert pinged his phone. "Grand jury convened in police, killing of Navy SEAL's son." The article featured a side-by-side comparison. Andre in his graduation cap, smiling toward a future in medicine. Mercer in his polished police portrait, eyes steely. The contrast was devastating. As afternoon faded, Mercer started drinking harder, cracking open beers before sliding into straight whiskey. His online activity grew darker, angrier, and more reckless with every swallow. He logged back into extremist forums, soaking up their messages of support. Several users promised they were rolling out to protect him from deep state puppets and globalist politicians. Drunk and furious, Mercer began posting his address, inviting armed supporters to stand watch. "They're coming for me because I did my job," he wrote. "Time to show we won't be sacrificed." He bragged about his tactical training and access to weapons, hinting at a showdown. Unbeknownst to him, Major Lynn's team captured screenshots of every post and immediately notified Carter. "Commander, Mercer is actively recruiting armed civilians to his house," Lynn reported. "He's heavily intoxicated and making direct threats." Carter's response was swift and controlled, rooted in experience. "Alert local authorities to the potential for an armed standoff," Carter ordered. "We stay out of direct engagement. Our mission is justice, not a firefight. But we can't let civilians get hurt because this man is spiraling." Within an hour, police had quietly expanded their presence around Mercer's neighborhood, stopping incoming cars and questioning drivers. Many would-be supporters were turned away before reaching the block, but a handful slipped through and parked near Mercer's home, openly carrying sidearms and communicating with cheap radios. Inside, Mercer, now heavily drunk, posted even more unhinged threats. "If they're taking me down," he typed, "I'm taking some with me." Monitoring systems flagged his messages as high risk. By midnight, Carter's carefully legal operation had overlapped with a volatile law enforcement crisis. SWAT units deployed around the perimeter, crisis negotiators were called in, and nearby homes were evacuated. Mercer sat barricaded inside, clutching weapons, while a few armed supporters hunkered outside, and police tactical teams formed a ring beyond them. The situation teetered on disaster. Floodlights bathed Mercer's house in harsh white. Helicopter rotors thumped overhead, and loudspeakers crackled intermittent commands. Mercer gripped his service weapon like a lifeline, waiting for the inevitable clash, too deep in fear, rage, and alcohol to recognize any remaining off-ramp. The man who'd always assumed he'd be protected by the system was now its quarry. Dawn on day 5 turned the neighborhood into something resembling a combat zone. Barriers sealed off every access road. SWAT officers crouched behind armored vehicles. Negotiators set up a command truck 2 blocks away. News choppers hovered just outside the restricted airspace, streaming live images to millions. Inside, Mercer had finally collapsed from exhaustion around 4 in the morning. 2 hours later, he jolted awake to the amplified voice of a tactical commander. Bradley Mercer, this is Captain Harold Sutton with Metro Police Special Response, the bullhorn boomed. You are surrounded. A grand jury has returned an indictment for first-degree murder. We have a warrant for your arrest. Walk out unarmed with your hands visible. Mercer staggered to the window, head pounding, and peered through a sliver in the blinds. The sight of armored trucks, snipers, and flashing lights made his stomach twist. A couple of his armed supporters remained crouched by vehicles, but most had scattered when the full police response rolled in. Panic and fury battled in his chest. He grabbed his phone and saw dozens of missed calls, including repeated attempts from an unknown number. As the bullhorn instructions continued, the phone buzzed again with the same mystery caller. Against his better judgment, Mercer answered. Mr. Mercer, a calm, authoritative voice said, this is Commander Elijah Carter. Mercer nearly dropped the phone, stunned to hear that name. Why the hell would I talk to you? He snarled, alcohol still fogging his thoughts. You're the reason I'm in this mess. Carter's voice didn't waver. I'm the father of the young man you killed, he said evenly. And right now, I may be the only person trying to make sure you survive the next few hours. Mercer gave a harsh laugh. So you can kill me yourself? Get your revenge? Carter exhaled audibly. If I wanted you dead, we wouldn't be having this conversation, he replied. I want justice, not an execution. Police Command has authorized me to talk with you as an intermediary. I've handled standoffs before. My goal is no more blood. Something in Carter's tone, professional, controlled, unmistakably commanding, cut through Mercer's haze. Why would you help me? Mercer demanded hoarsely. You have to hate me. Carter paused before answering. I don't hate you, he said. I hate what you did. I hate the system that convinced you you'd never face consequences. I hate that my son is gone and you're still breathing. But killing you won't bring Andre back, Carter continued quietly. And it won't change the machinery that shaped you. Adding one more body to the count doesn't fix anything. The stark honesty left Mercer speechless. Carter pressed on. This situation is deteriorating. Your supporters out there are drawing more armed people who are trying to reach your location. If they clash with the police, you're at the center of a crossfire, Carter said. We don't have much time. I need you to understand what's actually in front of you. Mercer's defiance started to crumble under the weight of reality. What options? He snapped weakly. They hit me with first-degree murder. That's life or a needle. Why in his eyes? This isn't justice, Mercer muttered. It's making an example out of me. Carter's voice stayed level. You're partly right. This case is bigger than just you. But if you go out shooting or force a raid, there's only one outcome. Your death might make extremists cheer, but it won't help your wife, your daughter, or my son's legacy." At the mention of his family, something inside Mercer flinched. "Have you talked to them?" he asked. "To Megan? To Chloe?" "I've spoken briefly with your wife," Carter said. "She and your daughter are safe at her sister's place. Right now, they're watching this unfold on TV, terrified you're going to die today. Is that really what you want for Chloe's last memory of you?" Mercer sank onto the couch, the weight of the past 5 days pressing down like concrete. Through the fog, whiskey, fear, humiliation, he felt a jagged flicker of clarity. He had destroyed another man's life, wrecked his own, and was about to shatter his daughter's future forever. "What happens if I give up?" he asked quietly. Carter explained the process in practical terms. Mercer would unload his weapons, exit unarmed, and be taken into custody. Carter promised to personally monitor the arrest and booking to ensure no payback from angry officers or inmates. As they spoke, Mercer's phone pinged with messages from his remaining supporters, urging him to stand strong and warning of conspiracies. "They don't care about you, Mercer," Carter said, reading the hesitation in his silence. "They care about their ideology. They'd happily let you die for their cause. Are you really ready to die for people who didn't even know your name last week?" Outside, tension spiked as police tightened their perimeter and protesters and media clustered behind barricades. Just then, one of Mercer's outside supporters, amped up and impatient, fired a round into the air. The crack of the shot electrified the scene. Officers immediately responded with return fire, forcing the armed civilians to dive behind cover. Mercer hit the deck instinctively, phone still pressed to his ear, heart hammering. The situation had tilted dangerously. Through the chaos, Carter's voice stayed remarkably calm. "Bradley, listen to me," he said. "Stay away from the windows. Do not pick up a gun. This is spiraling fast, and you're almost out of time. You have to make a choice now." Years of crisis training came to the surface as Carter's tone blended urgency and control perfectly. As Mercer lay there shaking, Carter played his strongest card. "I have your wife and daughter on another line," he said softly. "If you agree, I can connect them." Mercer hesitated, then nodded as if Carter could see him. "Do it," he whispered. A click sounded, and Megan's voice came through, thick with tears and fear. "Rick, please," she begged. "Please stop this. Just give up." Then Chloe's voice, small, trembling. "Dad, I'm scared. Please don't let them hurt you. I want you to come home someday." Her words sliced through Mercer's anger, knocking down the walls of denial and self-pity he'd piled around himself. For the first time, remorse began to surface. He pictured Chloe watching helicopters over their old neighborhood on the news, hearing classmates call him a murderer. He imagined her carrying his choices for the rest of her life. "Okay," he said finally, voice barely audible. "I'll come out. Tell them I'm surrendering." Carter moved quickly, coordinating with tactical command to ensure a controlled, professional arrest. Following Carter's instructions, Mercer unloaded each weapon and placed them in the bathtub. He called the few supporters outside and ordered them to leave. Only one actually listened. Then, wearing just jeans and a t-shirt, so there was nowhere to hide a gun, he opened his front door and stepped onto the porch with his hands raised high. From a command post down the street, Commander Elijah Carter watched through binoculars as the man who killed his son walked out alive and surrendered. There was no triumph on his face, no smile, only a hard, sorrowful focus. Beside him, Lieutenant Commander Victor Reyes studied his friend's expression, understanding the emotional cost of this moment. "You just protected the life of the man who took your sons," Reyes said quietly. Carter lowered the binoculars, jaw tight. "Justice isn't trading death for death," he replied. "It's about accountability and change." Mercer, alive, facing a courtroom, does more to challenge this system than Mercer dead, turned into a martyr for extremists. As the transport van carrying Mercer rolled away, Carter turned to his team. "This phase is done," he said. "Now we make sure the legal process does its job." The most explosive confrontation had ended without additional bloodshed, a testament to Carter's refusal to let grief turn into revenge and to his unwavering focus on systemic transformation. 6 months after Andre Carter's death, the courtroom fell into a heavy silence as the jury foreperson rose with the verdict. Mercer, thinner now, hair flecked with gray from time in jail, stood beside his overworked court-appointed attorney, eyes fixed on a point somewhere past the floor. The trial had stretched 3 weeks, exposing every dark corner. Former colleagues testified about buried complaints. Experts dissected police procedure and racial bias. The video was replayed frame by frame until no one could claim confusion. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Bradley James Mercer, guilty of murder in the first degrees," the foreperson announced. The words seemed to echo, bouncing off the hushed walls and rigid benches. On the prosecution side, Carter sat perfectly upright, his military bearing visible even in a simple suit. Attorney Monique Jefferson rested a brave, steadying hand on his arm, a small gesture of solidarity. A week later, at sentencing, Judge Anita Desai addressed Mercer directly, her voice carrying the weight of the bench and the community's outrage. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "you took an oath to serve and protect your city. Instead, you allowed prejudice and anger to corrupt that duty, resulting in the death of a promising young man who obeyed every instruction. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." Mercer stared straight ahead, expression hollowed out. Before deputies led Mercer away, Carter approached the podium to deliver his victim impact statement. Appearing in full-dress uniform this time, medals catching the courtroom's fluorescent light, he spoke in a clear, unwavering tone. "My son Andre was 21 when Mr. Mercer killed him," he began. "He wanted to be a doctor to heal people. He did everything right that day," Carter continued. "He followed the rules I'd taught him. His compliance didn't save him." Carter looked directly at Mercer for the first time. "This case is not just about our family's loss," he said. "Every time an officer abuses authority and walks away, trust between police and community erodes further. Every time the system protects those who violate their oath, it betrays the many officers who honor that oath," Carter said. "My son's death must mean something beyond our grief. It must drive real change, or this cycle will continue." After the criminal verdict, Jefferson pursued the civil suit against the department and city with equal intensity. The resulting settlement, $25 million, became a landmark case and seeded the creation of the Andre Carter Foundation for Police Accountability and Reform. Carter retired from active duty to lead it, channeling his tactical mindset and sorrow into a new mission. The foundation focused on 3 pillars: independent oversight, legal support, and transformational training. They pushed for truly independent review bodies with real power, not symbolic commissions. They funded legal teams to help families confronting police misconduct, and they designed training programs targeting implicit bias, de-escalation, and accountability, drawing heavily from military models where misuse of force carries serious consequences for everyone up the chain of command. Captain Paul Harrigan and 3 supervising officers faced charges of their own for helping conceal Mercer's earlier misconduct. Federal oversight forced sweeping reform on the department, including mandatory body cameras, transparent disciplinary processes, and a civilian review board empowered to recommend real penalties. Many of Carter's Phoenix operators transitioned into permanent roles within the new foundation. Reyes became the executive director, managing day-to-day operations and outreach. Major Lynn built a data analysis unit that tracked nationwide patterns of police misconduct, creating reports policymakers couldn't ignore. Captain Field developed training modules modeled after military after-action reviews, forcing departments to analyze uses of force with brutal honesty instead of defensive spin and excuses. Perhaps most unexpectedly, 6 months into Mercer's sentence, Carter requested a private meeting with Megan and Chloe at the Foundation's headquarters. In a small conference room, Megan sat stiffly with one arm wrapped around her daughter, eyes wary. Chloe stared at the table, shoulders tense. Carter entered quietly, without uniform, and sat opposite them. "I asked you here because you've also been harmed by what happened," he said gently, "in a very different way from my family, but harmed nonetheless." He explained that the Foundation was creating a scholarship fund for children impacted by police misconduct, including children of convicted officers. "Chloe would qualify," he said. "We'd like to support her education." Megan blinked, stunned. "Why would you help us?" she asked. "After what Brad did to Andre." Carter's gaze stayed steady, though grief flickered in his eyes. "Because punishing innocent family members doesn't create justice," he replied. "Chloe didn't choose her father's choices. Her future shouldn't be collateral damage. Ending cycles means refusing to expand the circle of punishment." The unexpected compassion shattered the thin emotional armor Megan had been clinging to. Tears spilled down her cheeks as Chloe peeked up, confused but hopeful. As the Foundation grew nationally, the video of Andre's killing, once a spark for outrage, was incorporated into formal police training programs across the country as part of a comprehensive accountability curriculum. Cadets and veteran officers alike watched the footage alongside guided discussions on bias, procedural justice, and crisis decision-making. Departments that had once dismissed such cases as isolated incidents now use the Andre Carter case as a cautionary tale about what happens when bias, arrogance, and lack of oversight intersect with a badge and a gun. On the 1-year anniversary of Andre's death, Carter visited his son's grave alone. He placed a fresh bouquet beside the headstone and carefully set down Andre's framed medical school acceptance letter, which had arrived posthumously. Standing in the quiet cemetery, he finally let tears slide down his face, his shoulders shaking for the first time in public. "We did it, son," he whispered. "They didn't get away with it this time." But there was no triumph in his voice, only hollow ache. No verdict, settlement, or reform could fill the empty space Andre left behind. Justice had been served, changes were underway, but the price would always be his son's irreplaceable life and future. As Carter prepared to leave, his phone buzzed with news from the foundation. A teenager named Jordan, one of Chloe's classmates, had come forward with something unexpected. Jordan revealed that Andre had volunteered as a tutor in their after-school program, helping students with science and math. He'd never mentioned it to his father, treating it as everyday service. Photos showed Andre leaning over desks with a warm smile, explaining equations, encouraging kids who'd struggled with school. Several of the teens in the pictures were close friends of Chloe's. The cruel twist was undeniable. The man who killed Andre had destroyed a life that, indirectly, had been helping the social circle around his own daughter. Carter sat late into that night in his office, scrolling through the photos. The irony cut deep, but it also renewed his commitment. If Andre's generosity had quietly touched those kids, Carter could honor that legacy by expanding the Foundation's youth programs, focusing on connection instead of division, mentorship instead of fear, and opportunity instead of despair. They launched a new initiative, the Andre Program: Advancement, Networking, Development, Resilience, and Education. It paired teens from communities with tense police relationships with mentors, scholarships, and leadership training. The goal was simple but ambitious: build bridges where distrust had grown, and give young people tools to navigate and challenge the systems affecting their lives. Did Bradley Mercer deserve life without parole, or could there have been another path to accountability? Let me know what you think real justice should look like in cases of deadly police misconduct. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you believe Carter's strategic, disciplined fight offers lessons for real-world reform beyond this story. Subscribe for more deep, challenging true stories that force us to examine race, power, and policing in America. Share this video with someone who still doesn't understand why police accountability isn't optional. It's essential. Sometimes numbers and charts don't change minds, but a single story like Andre's can crack open conversations people have avoided for years. Thank you for staying with this difficult journey through one father's war against a system built to protect those who abuse power. Carter's story shows that institutional shields don't fall from outrage alone. They fall when outrage is paired with preparation, resources, and smart strategy. It proves that you can demand accountability without surrendering your principles. For communities facing injustice, this story is a blueprint. Organize, plan, build networks, learn the system's rules, and use them against its injustices. And for those wearing a badge, it's a reminder. Authority without accountability is a ticking bomb. If this story changed how you think about justice, race, or policing, please share it forward. May we all find the courage to confront injustice wherever it appears, even when doing so is uncomfortable, risky, or painful. May we choose accountability over silence, strategy over chaos, and change over resignation. And may Andre Carter's story remind us that the fight for justice is not abstract. It's personal, human, and desperately urgent. Authority without accountability is a loaded gun. If you are in your mid-60s or older, you have watched this country wrestle with questions of power for a very long time. You remember when a badge, a uniform, or a title often went unquestioned, even when something felt wrong in your gut. The story of Andre Carter and Officer Bradley Mercer is a painful reminder that authority, left unchecked, can still become a loaded gun pointed at the wrong people. Andre did everything many of you taught your own children and grandchildren to do. Keep your hands visible, be respectful, answer yes sir, And no, sir, don't argue on the side of the road. Yet 3 bullets ended his life on a quiet street that could look a lot like your own. Mercer's story shows how habits, prejudice, and a system that had always protected him combined into something deadly. He was not afraid of consequences, because for 17 years, there never were any. That is the first hard lesson. Power without real accountability does not stay neutral. It bends toward abuse. Preparation in community can turn grief into strategy. Many of you know what it is to bury a child, a spouse, a brother in arms. You also know how easy it is for grief to curdle into rage or to sink into numb silence. Commander Elijah Carter chose another path, one that may speak to those of you who have lived a life of duty and responsibility. He had spent decades as a Navy SEAL, serving a country that did not always treat him fairly. Yet he stayed, excelled, and built a network of people who trusted his judgment. And when Andre was killed, he did not rush to the street with a sign in his hand. He opened a folder. Phoenix Protocol, his quiet contingency plan, turned heartbreak into disciplined action. Lawyers, intelligence experts, former soldiers, and honest cops all took their places like pieces on a chessboard. Carter's story reminds us that grief can be powerful, but grief plus preparation, relationships, and clear purpose can rattle even the strongest institutions. Justice did not arrive because of one video alone. It came because a community, guided by a steady hand, refused to be intimidated or distracted. Justice is more than punishment. It is the work of repair. If you have lived long enough, you know that putting someone in prison does not magically heal a wound. When Mercer finally stood in court, thinner and stripped of his swagger, some might have wished for a dramatic ending, a violent standoff, a final act of revenge. Instead, Carter did something harder, and in many ways, braver. He insisted that Mercer live to face judgment. He negotiated during the standoff so that no one else would die, not even the man who had taken his only child. He pushed for a trial, not a lynching, and when the verdict came, life without parole, he did not stop there. With the settlement money, he built the Andre Carter Foundation, not just to remember his son, but to change the system that had protected men like Mercer for so long. Older Americans, who have watched generation after generation struggle with the same problems, know that this is what real justice looks like. It is more than a sentence. It is body cameras that cannot be shut off, review boards that actually have teeth, training that forces officers to confront their own bias, and scholarships that help children on every side of the tragedy build a different future. Carter even reached out to Mercer's wife and daughter, offering help for a girl who would carry her father's actions for the rest of her life. The kind of country we leave behind. For those of you in your late 60s, 70s, or beyond, this story is not just about today's headlines. It is about what kind of America you will hand over when you are gone. You have already lived through wars, recessions, and upheavals that younger people only read about in history books. You know that the promise of liberty and justice for all has always depended on ordinary people refusing to look away. The lessons from Andre and Elijah Carter's story are simple but not easy. We must insist that power be watched, not worshipped. We must turn our sorrow into organized, disciplined action. And we must understand that justice is not a single verdict, but a lifelong project of repair. You still have a role to play. By voting, by speaking up in your churches and veterans' halls, by listening to younger voices, and by sharing the wisdom of years lived. The legacy you leave will not be measured only in savings accounts and family heirlooms, but in whether you helped make this country safer and fairer for the children and grandchildren who come after you. That, in the end, is the justice Andre Carter deserved, and the promise America still owes to all of its sons and daughters. Friends, after walking through Andre and Commander Carter's journey, I'd love to hear from you. In your lifetime, you've seen this country change again and again, sometimes for the better, sometimes not. Do you believe true police accountability can be built inside the system, the way Carter did, using the courts and the law? Or do you think it will take something entirely different? What would you like to see happen so your children and grandchildren are safer than Andre was? Share your thoughts in the comments, tap like, and subscribe so you don't miss more stories and conversations like this.